Greetings to one and all, it's your old buddy Jay here, coming at you with another episode of Countermeasures Game Changer. I'm on a roll this week. Now, I'm pretty much up to date in terms of my gaming life over the last couple of weeks. Today I would like to talk about The Sinking City. Now, The Sinking City is an action-adventure game developed by Frogwares and inspired by the works of the horror fiction author H.P. Lovecraft. Now, if anybody's ever read any of H.P. Lovecraft's books, you will know that they are based around a time when it all feels very kind of prohibition, sort of post First World War America, and each of his books tell these kind of fantastical stories of people facing the unknown, people tipped with madness, this kind of world of mystery that's hidden behind the real world, and what happens when these protagonists touch on that world. So you have books like the most famous book from the late 1920s is The Call of Cthulhu, or Cthulhu, however you want to say it. And then he had several other books like At the Mountains of Madness was one of them. The Dunwich Horror book was one of them. And there are many books that he wrote. He was a prolific writer during his time. He was also slightly racist, but we'll get into that later. Now, the inspiration for this game is obviously taken from those books, and you basically, the story is a fictional story set in the fictional city of Oakmont in Massachusetts during the 1920s. The story follows a private investigator and war veteran called Charles W. Reed. Now, it starts off where you're on a boat. There's a little bit of voiceover talking about how he'd been in quite a horrific boat accident, during the war, and lost a lot of his comrades. And since then, he's become a private eye. But he keeps having these terrifying visions and his terrible nightmares, and he feels that he's being drawn towards Oakmont. And in doing that, feeling that way, he also finds out that a lot of other people have been drawn to Oakmont as well. So him being a private investigator, he wants to know why. And that's all set up in the first couple of minutes. So I must admit that, in terms of sort of a quick, the way they do the kind of quick backstory, I think they handle it really well, and they set it up all really well, and it's really intriguing. Now, it doesn't feel like that opening is necessarily anything groundbreaking, but they have done it in such a way that they don't gloss over anything or speed over any of the that initial setup. They do it in a very, it's very well written, and and it sets up the story nicely. I feel that this game originally came out for the PlayStation 4 in 2019, and the reason that I'm now talking about it today is that it has recently had a 4K upgrade and 60 frames a second, etc., for the PlayStation 5. And at the moment, with the next gen games and everything, I am starved for next gen games. So I thought, well, I did buy this on the PlayStation 4 ages ago. I started playing it, and the game was so janky. The loading screens took so long. It didn't look that great. Aside from the story was a great setup and intrigued me immediately, but the initial first hour that I played on the PlayStation 4, it just put me off, and I kind of thought, well, I'm going to wait until there have been a few upgrades. Turns out I can wait for about a year and a half, so until it comes out on the next gen. So since it's come out on the PS5, obviously it's had a whole load of next gen upgrades, and I'm going to do that in air bunnies, because basically this game does look a little bit trashy. The minute-to-minute gameplay is, a lot of walking around in these kind of very, what feels like sort of PlayStation 3 environments. The textures aren't that great. Even on this PS5 version, there's a lot of pop-in. Is it using the ray tracing ability of the PS5 to its maximum? No, I don't think it's using it at all. But, they've said in their press releases and everything that it has had an upgrade. I'm not sure I can see it very much. I think the game, minute-to-minute gameplay does feel a little bit smoother. That's definitely helped it. But as far far as the quality of this game, I mean, it is nothing compared to what can be done with these systems now. And it has all the things wrong with it. Like here, you can see, you're trying to shoot that dude through the glass, this sort of weird monster through the glass. You can't do it. So there's a lot of kind of collision issues. The game itself, the combat itself, as you can see, isn't really that great. The voice work is very good. I must admit that so far a lot of the non-playable characters that I've interacted with, as Charles Reed, the detective, has been quite good. So those moments where you're kind of interacting with people and you're choosing your dialogue options, that has actually been one of the highlights of the game so far. Now, I usually wait until I've finished a game before I do any kind of reviews over it. I'm about 5 to 6 hours in on this one, and I just felt compelled to talk about it because I don't see the gameplay and the actual design of this changing that much. And also, I did want to speak about it because when it first came out in 2019, before pre-release, I saw a few trailers for it, and it did look really cool. It seemed like something that I might be interested in. I have read some of the H.P. Lovecraft books. I also have a whole load of the illustrated graphic novels of these various stories, like The Outsider and things like that, and I did really enjoy them. So when they said that this was one of the games that was probably going to be closest to sticking to the lore of those books, I've always been intrigued with that world. I do think that this kind of idea that there's your normal everyday world that exists, but behind it there's this kind of mystical, kind of spiritual, hidden sort of undertone to everything, that if you kind of start scratching the surface, then you start unraveling and revealing this whole kind of underworld of sort of sinister weirdness. And I do really like that. I also like the fact that it's all tied to in a kind of sort of, in a very positive way, it's all very fish based, which sort of for some reason just takes, the sea is such a beautiful place and there's so many beautiful things in it, but there are things that live in the depths that we still don't fully understand. And I think that's something that the H.P. Lovecraft novels have always done really well. They've always pulled on this idea, these little sort of strings of ideas, that there's things that we don't really know that live down there, that there's monsters things that we would consider to be monsters that have lived down there for a long time, and they've existed down there for hundreds if not thousands of years. And I like the idea of those things coming into contact with everyday life, and that's something that this game does very well. So when you arrive in the city of Oakmont, basically the city itself has been flooded at some point. So most of there's a lot of it that's underwater. It is a city, it is on the coast, so it's meant to be a kind of Venice style environment. And the environment is so strong in as much as there are large parts of water that you can't cross on foot, so you have to travel by boat. There's a lot of sort of trashed boats in the middle of public areas that wouldn't normally have been there had the city not been totally flooded before. So the idea is that the city's been flooded, and then everything is kind of the water's resided, but it's left behind all of this weird crap. So there's like weird, there'll be a massive shark in the middle of a place where there shouldn't be a shark, or there'll be like a fish stuck in walls, and just the kind of when you see on the news about these places that get really badly flooded and then the waters reside, all the junk and all of the stuff from the sea that gets left behind just gives this environment such a tactile feel, and they've really done that really well in this game. Now, the graphics aren't very good, I must back that up. I'm not saying that this is the most beautiful game, but the tone of voice and the style that they've applied to the city is really atmospheric and works really, really well. So everything is damp and trashed, and also that feeds into the style of the way that this has been illustrated and drawn, and kind of the designers have worked on the look and feel of it all. They can work very quick and dirty, and there are bits that look a little bit broken, but it's okay because the city is meant to be in a state of decay. So that really has gripped me with this game, and I think think that is one of the key elements of why, despite the fact that this doesn't seem as exciting as Cyberpunk, it doesn't have the it doesn't feel as engaging as a lot of sort of modern day sort of more recent games. That the minute to minute gameplay is all intense and in your face, and there's a lot happening, and it's all very vibrant and colourful, and the finish and the quality is all high def. None of that matters in this game. I feel that I've immediately let it off, because I feel that like the story, the foundation of the idea that you're this guy going to a location trying to find out more about your own past, the visions you've been having, why people have been going missing. The mystery behind that is really, really intriguing. The story is really engaging, and it's also at a time when it's meant to be based loosely around the 1920s. So nobody has a jetpack, nobody's invisible, nobody's got bionic arms or kind of cyber implants. Nobody's got any, it's all very based in that time of, what would have happened if something like this had happened to a city during that period of time. So it's not futuristic in any way, and in being that way, it just adds a whole level of realism. Now the gameplay in terms of the combat isn't very good. Now I don't know, every time I say any sort of key element that I'd normally be praising or damning or whatever, I seem to be saying that it's all a bit naff, and it is a bit naff, but the jankiness of that makes me feel it feels at home with this game. You understand the controls of that the aiming isn't that great, and that you are seriously limited on ammo like you would be in like a Resident Evil game. So it pulls from that idea that you are constantly scrounging around for ammo, and like you would be in the times in a state of like prohibition and all of that. Kind of the ideas behind that time kind of really play well into this, and I think that they've done a really good job of nailing the tone of voice. Now what else can I say about it? I'm raving about it. I'm not sure I can recommend it to anyone. It's one of those games where I think it's one of my own guilty pleasures, but there is a huge part of this game, aside from the kind of janky combat, as you can see here, taking that guy out, there's that's about as in-depth as it gets. Now as you go around the city, you do find other elements of this kind of weird, all the water having washed away left stuff behind. There are crazy little creatures running around in corners that aren't always there. They hardly ever pop up in the first kind of 5 to 6 hours that I've played so far, but when they do pop up, it's quite shocking, and you can take them out with one bullet. So it's not like they're massive bullet sponges, or you're having these big boss fights like you would do in like Demon Souls or any of that stuff. They're just kind of like these living little critters. Like if you saw a cat that was running down the street and you shot it, you'd kill the cat with one gun. You wouldn't have to shoot it 50 times, and that's something that they've embraced with some of these kind of smaller creatures that I've seen so far. And again, it just adds another level of realism. And have actually seen some cats in this as well, and the cats are all weirdly mutated, and again that's because there's this stuff that's come out of the water that's changed their DNA somehow, and again there's a whole other side to this game, which is the whole kind of RPG side of it, in terms of like talking to non-playable characters and finding more information out about what's happening within this city. And that's something that's really interesting too, because it's not like you're just talking to design number 4 person who talks this way, but their hair's slightly different. What they've actually done is they've really taken the time to work out a lore behind the characters. So you've got like a whole sort of family that lives in this city that are sort of really descended from apes, so they look very ape-like. And then also there are people that are kind of they look like normal people, but they've kind of got slightly weird fish-like tendencies. Their whole families live by the sea in this really sort of strange spiritual place for such a long time that they've started to evolve in a different way as well. So the characters are really intriguing. So you'll be walking down the road and there'll be like a lady with her umbrella, and there'll be a guy sort of with a backpack full of stuff selling his wares or whatever, and then there'll just be a fish bloke with a top hat on, and he's not overtly looking like a fish, but he's just fishy enough, and I like that. And there's also something else, I like that kind of engagement of different characters. They've really thought about the design of those characters, and that's something that's really intriguing about this game. And I like that. I like the way that you can engage with them as normal people. They have like all different accents, some of them Cockneys or whatever, but but they are like a combat. Their DNA has been combined with this weird spiritual thing that's going on. This kind of this sort of wave of sort of fish-based DNA that's just absorbed into the town, and even more so since the flood happened. So, as you go through the game, basically what happens is you're trying to find more about what your own condition, but also you're picking up various key missions from people that need things to be done. Now, as you sort of progress as a detective, you actually do detective work in this game. So you have to, like here where I was just looking through that building, you have to find like a secret wall. You pick stuff up. There's lots to read. So there's lots of kind of lore behind all of this, which I really like, and it really kind of emphasises the story and the progress of the story. You don't have to read it. You can just go through and barrel through in about 15-20 hours and finish the storyline. But I think that you're probably missing a trick really if you're not taking the time to read any of the additional content that's been written, that supports this, because it's really well written, and it really does help you understand what's happening in terms of developing the story, and it helps you to become a better detective. I know that sounds a bit naff, but actually you do have to solve these certain crimes. You have to pick things up, work things out. There's a whole section of your there's a little book that opens up, and there's a whole section of your book where you have to put clues together in a certain way. Those clues then open up the next part of your mission, and I really like the fact that you don't just go to someone, they say go here, do this fetch quest, you go, you do it, you go back to them, and then it's done. You've got a whole sequence of events that need to unfold before you can move the story on, and you're not always going back to people, you're just solving it yourself within your notebook, and I really like that part of it. So there's a huge part, as you can see here, there's a part of the book which is your mind palace, which I absolutely love, which is the old from the TV Sherlock show, I guess, if not from it, I'm sure that was taken from somewhere else, but I like the connection to that. And you do have to put things together in a logical way, so the game doesn't hold your hand, which I really like. And you can set the difficulty, obviously you can set it in a way that helps you out with the clues if you're struggling a little bit. And I must say that I've been really enjoying that part of it, as well as the janky gameplay, and as well as the kind of crappy graphics and all that kind of stuff. I think that the developer Frogware have done a really good job in nailing the tone of voice of this story, and so far I am absolutely loving it. Now, I do think it may actually be my favourite game of the year so far, and I did love Cyberpunk. I'm not saying that that's not an achievement that has a conversation for another time, but this game for me is just has the right pace of detective work, of combat, of interesting characters, interesting location. It can be linear if you want it to be, but actually there's multiple side quests that you can take on. There's weird little creatures popping up that I haven't, I haven't seen half of them yet, but I'm intrigued to see how that goes on. And also there's a really weird feeling of eeriness about the whole place. The fact that there's lots of half-dead fish and octopuses everywhere and all this stuff that's been washed up from the sea, you can smell the place. You know what rotting fish smells like, and what those seaside towns smell like. So when you're playing this game, there's a weird sensory thing happening with me personally, and in as much as I'm kind of really getting absorbed into this environment. Now, this game, I think, it did okay when it came out in 2019. I think it got a fairly decent score. I think IGN gave it a 7.8. which is, fairly decent. I'm not sure that I can give it a score that high because, I'm not sure I can recommend it to anyone, because I feel like this game has been tailored towards, a lot of the things that I'm really interested in. So in that respect, I'm sure there's a lot of people that feel the same way. They've really nailed their audience, and maybe it isn't a kind of, a broader audience game, and maybe it is, if you've got enough, history of reading any of these books, you're intrigued in this kind of detective stuff, you like a little bit of basic gunplay, then maybe maybe I've just summed myself up there, because I think that all of those things combined are obviously doing something for me, and I am really enjoying it. Now, like I said, not sure I can recommend it to anyone else, but I'd say play the first couple of hours. It's a slow burn. the conversations you have with people do steer you in different ways. I mean, I'd already solved a murder where I'd found the person who'd done the murder, and then when I went back to the person who hired me, I lied and told them that person had died, and that they weren't, that they hadn't survived. So there was no way that they could actually close their case, if you like, and that took my my missions off in a my conversations off with people in a completely different way. Now, how much of that really influences the game? I'm probably pretty much sure not very much of it, but it felt like I was changing the game at that point. And if there's more of that as I continue on, then so be it. And I am looking forward to playing through a lot more of this. So again, being by the sea, it's all it does set that tone of voice, which is all very sort of damp and spooky, and and it's constantly raining, so everything's wet, and your clothing is wet, and and every now and again they'll break up the story with you having a slight episode, because obviously the reason you are here is to uncover your own issues, which I've hardly touched on at all, really. Well, my own personal issues, as well as the detective here, old Reed. So yeah, I mean, it was all put together in Unreal Engine 4, which is fairly old engine, but it's doing the job. And I just feel that while it doesn't particularly look that great, it doesn't particularly play that great, I do feel that they've nailed the tone of voice of this, and and I am really looking forward to, like I say, sort of pushing through and carrying on a bit more. Now, I understand that you can finish this game in about 20 hours. I think completionists are kind of hitting about the 40 to 50 hour mark. I'm thinking I'm probably not going to do quite so many of the side missions, because I feel like the couple that I have done already, I feel like they sort of are detracting a little bit away from the main story. I did really enjoy some of the books that I read from H.P. Lovecraft, which were all of these stories about a single person sort of mission to solve this sort of weirdness that they're kind of experiencing, and they don't know what it is that's influencing them. They maybe there is kind of mystical connection, and what I like about all of those books is that by the time the protagonist kind of finds out what is causing all of these things and what's affecting them in that way, it's too late. You've learnt too much, and then the story unfolds in a sort of weird and sinister way, and I think that's something that has been consistent throughout all of those books, and there've been a few TV shows which, while they're not been that great, they've kind of tugged along the similar strings. They've pulled those similar strings. So now, like I said, not sure I can recommend it to anyone, but I am going to give it a score of, for me, I'd probably give it a 9, but realistically it's probably a 5. So there you go, polarized from one end to the other. So yeah, if you feel like giving it a go, I would thoroughly recommend it. And yeah, as always, be good, stay safe, and be kind to one another. Cheers.